to the 5 to 9 Club podcast. We have a special guest in the building, Bilal Sheikh. And co-hosting with me is Nawal. This is just to want to talk about what the purpose of the podcast is. Our professor taught us to, the first word that comes out of your mouth when you're doing a presentation is the SOP, the statement of purpose. And of course, this podcast is trying to have these meaningful conversations about professional life and career with some interesting and accomplished people, so they can give their perspective on things.
Are you sure about the interesting things? We're gonna try.
Do you want me to play the drums and show you how interesting it is?
That is true. That's true.
Okay, so aimed at students mostly to give them as much value as possible, practical value, just to kind of have people over and share like how their professional journey has been, to kind of so students and graduates, current professionals that can benefit from these conversations. So you want to hand it over to Nawal so she can start us on the pre-CMU kind of Bilal.
Sure. Well, yikes. So, Hi. Well, congratulations on your wedding. That's a big deal.
Thanks so much.
Score. So Bilal and I have known each other since early CMU. Do you want to tell us a little bit about introduce yourself, and
Sure.
then what got you to CMU? How did you find out about it? And what was that journey like?
Carnegie Mellon, right?
Yeah. Guys, first of all, thank you so much for having me on this podcast. It's a pleasure to see students still outside of their work pursuing initiatives even after graduating, so that's wonderful. I think so. Coming across CMU was the usual process, right? So you're applying for different universities. Like I came across Carnegie Mellon as one of those fantastic institutions. I realized there was a Pittsburgh branch and then there was a Qatar one. And the Qatar one just made a lot more sense because one, it was closer to home. So, Pakistan is just 3 hours away. Financially, there was also support in terms of financial aid. And it turns out that a lot of the experience that I wanted to have, let's say in the US, you could still replicate that here, and then the culture and the values would be very much similar to where I'm coming from. So in a lot of those sense, I felt like Carnegie Mellon Qatar was a very good choice. How I ended up at Carnegie Mellon is a bit funny. I had wanted to get into the field of economics after I finished my A-levels, and like this is pre-CMU Bilal, so please don't judge me too much. I was looking at the programs out of the Pittsburgh campus, and I thought, hey, undergraduate economics makes a lot of sense. And for some odd reason, I thought that the Carnegie Mellon business program over here is sort of this umbrella under which all of these different undergraduate programs are there.
Okay.
So I applied, I went through, I thought, okay, I'm probably getting to economics. And so a week before orientation, there are people introducing themselves on the Facebook group and saying, I'm here.
So this is after you've gotten in?
Yeah, everything. It's a week before orientation.
Okay.
And so over there, everyone's introducing themselves and like, I'm from here, this is my major, pleased to meet everyone. And so I go in and I'm like, hey, I'm from Pakistan and I'm so excited to join the economics program.
Oh my God.
And somebody over there from the orientation team's like, dude, we don't have an economics program. And I'm like, this is going to be fun. And this is one of those, interesting turns in life where you've not planned for, but it turns out to be one of the best things that happened to you.
Right.
Because as I progressed through my BA program, I realized that economics was not something I really wanted to go too deep in. But that was basically pre-CMU Bilal. Some fine choices here and there.
Jeez.
I want to ask why economics, like what makes someone like pre-university think or be passionate about economics to be able to...
I think a large part of that influence comes from the people that you're studying with in A-levels. So everyone's talking about relatively very similar fields, but also distinct ones in a way that, hey, if you're going towards economics or business, it's sort of like the one umbrella. Okay. And then you have engineering and then you have medical, and that's the extent of your,
So a broad idea of maybe that's what I wanted to do, but not like, okay, I want to work.
Yeah, not much. Because in A-levels, I took subjects like physics, chemistry, math, economics, and world history. Right? So you could not figure out where exactly am I going to end up with. But economics seemed like something that was safe.
Yeah.
And also something I felt like I could make a career in.
Yeah, I could totally relate to this, like, because you don't, it's it's such a difficult time in your life, high school, that
Yeah.
you don't want to like make a commitment into like, oh, I'm gonna be the science kid, or
Yeah.
I'm gonna be the
doctor,
the doctor.
or the engineer,
So a lot of us that were good at school but
Mm.
didn't want to like define ourselves. We're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
we'll just do business or we'll just do economics and
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes. So yeah, I can totally relate to this. Cool. So then you get to CMU.
Yes.
And tell me, what was that like? I mean, did you know people at CMU beforehand? So did you go in with a friend group? Did a lot of you come together, or did you were you completely fish out of water situation?
You were very active in your. I remember how you were.
But that was later though. You met him in junior year. So
Really?
yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm speaking freshman year.
Like, everywhere. Bilal was everywhere.
That's
So
true.
inspiring.
Thank
He
you,
really
thank
was.
you.
He was
No.
like, it was. Can I tell you something? I remember when Faisal, so my brother, for anybody that doesn't know, he joined 2 years after me.
Yeah.
And later we were talking about this, and he was like, yeah. You know, there were these prominent people when you joined, right? Like you enter CMU, and there were these prominent people. They were like, when I grow up, I want to be like them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like everybody, exactly. Like people that you just look up to. And he's like, for me, as soon as I entered, I was like, Bilal, like that's what I want to be like when I'm at that point.
Right. I'm humbled by that, guys. Thank you so much. Look, I think, so when I started at CMU, I was coming from this background where and I think this played a huge role in why I was active in CMU as well, is that back in A-levels, I was surrounded by a group of people, or my friends, who were very active in the community as well, right? So from the debates angle, I was involved.
Oh, yeah, we did that together for a while. Yeah,
right?
I
So
forgot about that.
There was a history there in terms of A-levels, and it goes back all the way to 9th grade, where I was introduced to things like Model United Nations, how to debate, and then there were other clubs and stuff that were there in A-levels, right? So I was continuing on that spirit when I joined in CMU. I was like, okay, that canvas of the things that I could do has just become 100 times bigger. And there's this curiosity to see what can I accomplish and what can I experience. And so I think it was the last thing that you said, which was I was a fish right out of the water. And I was trying to figure out what exactly do I want to get into.
Yeah.
But some part of it made sense because I'd been, let's say, debating for a while. So debate club was like, okay, this is what I want to experience. But then as things unraveled, there was a lot of exciting stuff.
Yeah, so I think that this is this thing with a lot of freshmen struggle with, right? Like, what is their identity going to be? So you hear a lot of conflicting advice, like, join everything in your freshman year, and then pick a thing, or
I wish I did that.
I did that, and I think it was a bad idea.
Yeah.
I mean, in retrospect, I guess it worked out okay. But how did you navigate that? Like, what activities did you end up finding? What was your approach? Like, did you want to try a lot of things? Did you have a very specific thing? And then what did you find rewarding? And what was your approach in general?
I think as a freshman, there was something that Student Affairs had mentioned as well, right? That you'll enter into a honeymoon phase.
Yeah, I remember that.
You would want to do everything that you lay your hands on. And so I think there were 15 clubs at the activities fair. I think I joined 17.
Oh yeah, activity! Do you guys remember activities fair?
Yeah.
Oh my god,
So
throwback.
I just went around signed up my name everywhere.
Yeah, there was always that one kid that did
I'm gonna, environment, yes, I care.
Yes, I care about the environment.
Yeah, I want to do community service,
so
sign me
true.
up. But I think as time went on, I realized that obviously it's impossible for you to stretch yourself so much. And I think as an A-level student, you kind of get the knack of, studying a little late and still managing to get through. And that was not a recipe that works when you're dealing with courses at CMU, right? It requires a decent amount of effort, focus, time management and whatnot. And so when you had these club options, you really had to pick, okay, these are 2-3 I'm going to really focus on. And then try to expand on the experience in the coming years, right? Not try to cramp up everything in that first or second semester. And it also happens to be where I try to balance things off between, so for example, freshman year, I was doing Intro to Computing or
Python with Fusati.
and that was a completely new world for me. I was like, wait, I'm a business student. Why am I coding for stuff, right? And that was a challenging course for me. I dropped the first semester. I tried to do the second semester.
I was one of the droppers.
Right? Because I tied myself up with, very actively involved in debating and all these things. And so it just came down to what did I want to prioritize for that semester, right? I also, unfortunately, in my first year, bought into this bad advice, which was GPA does not matter. And that when you graduate, people don't look at your GPA and it's perfectly fine. So you screw up. So I screwed up my first year's GPA. And that had very long-term implications, right? In the next 3 years, trying to cover it up.
It does, especially when you're shooting for special companies, like there you have companies in mind. It does hurt you. And
I had heard this advice as well, that like your first semester GPA matters the most because like apparently that's what everything's gonna be weighed on. So if you get a less than a 3 in your first semester, it's by the time you carry to your last semester, like
somehow the math doesn't make sense.
Right? It's so weird.
Like sure, I mean, one semester I did bad, one semester I did really good. It should somehow balance off. But no, the first semester.
That's why the trick. So that's the trick a lot of people did. They were just like, I'm just gonna put my best last semester's GPA on. I'm not gonna put my cumulative because cumulative, to make it make sense, you have to wait till the end. But this GPA thing.
It was not fun. But I think after the first year went through, the second year was where I tried to balance off things a lot. So I'm like, okay, debating is what I want to focus on. Maybe a little bit of community service, and then CMU hosts these different trips every year, so try to get into one of those
trips. Those help me a lot.
So they're fantastic experiences. So I thought, okay, I won't stretch myself out too thin because one, I need to get that GPA back, and two, let's really do well in these 2-3 clubs and not piss off all the other club presidents and say you kind of make
that's always tricky.
Students should kind of keep an eye on their GPA, like seriously, like not let it drop, and focus, pick like 2 or 3 things in terms of activities, and third of all, they have to do trips, because trips are, why are trips so important? Because I remember having like the London trip, and it kind of opened me up to thinking about,
did we go on that London trip together? No, I think you went after me. No, we didn't go together.
We didn't go together.
We went after
Like we met so many different companies, talked to so many different people, and I came back like a changed man. Like I was thinking differently about careers and interests.
Exactly, because you would start off university with the same kind of mindset that, hey, there are these 2-3 career paths that make sense. Right. But then when you look at the world outside and you're like, wait, there is so much that you could look into. So those trips were really important. I think the 2 most memorable ones for me were one to Silicon Valley.
You went on that.
So in that trip you get to meet a lot of founders. Why did they start companies? I remember meeting the founder of WhatsApp. And it just shook me, right? So there was a problem that I think we all experienced at some point, which was you were going through MSN Messenger and the experience was just very, very broken.
I loved MSN Messenger. What are you talking about?
Because we hadn't tested out WhatsApp at that point, right?
That's true.
And so the simplicity of WhatsApp versus what you have to go through to set up Messenger and get to talk to people. The WhatsApp founder just made that very simple. Like, here's a problem I was facing every single day. I thought, why not just build a Messenger app? And so there were these founders, and then the second trip that I remember very well is the service trip to Thailand. And this is where we spent 2 weeks in the rural areas of Thailand trying to, build the foundation of an orphanage, which was very labor intensive work. And secondly, trying to help out a local farmer trying to plow his rice fields. And man, that stuff is...
I heard you guys like slept in the shed. Is this true?
It is true. There were at night, if you wanted to go to the bathroom, you would have absolutely no light whatsoever. You'd be using your torch just to figure out where this...
This is like handiwork. It's not like business oriented trip. You just go on like a service trip, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Those are important as well, right?
Very important. Very important. I think professional service projects, right, was one of the things
PSP.
where
my god, PSP points. What the fuck?
Right, so all of these different experiences you have eventually accumulate to points that you need to have as a business student. I think that's one of the best things that the business program has. And so just working in that field at noon and trying to plow the land and trying to make way because you're going to plant the rice crop, you build this true appreciation for the food that's on your plate in the afternoon, and you realize what went, in towards bringing that thing to the table, right? So things that we take for granted every day. So just eye-opening experiences through and through.
So just you never know which kind of experience can put you on like a better path in your life, professionally and personally. So try different things. Man, my freshman year, I was trying to be too cool for everyone. I swear to God, like I was, worried too much about my image.
Yeah.
And that hurt me. That hurt me. Like I think by junior, I'm like, that's not how I should have started CMU.
Yeah.
I should have shook like everyone's hands. Should have talked to every professor. Should have joined every club. That's why when Noelle told me she tried everything, I was like, no, that's what I should have done. But I'm gonna go on a small tangent back to like you mentioned like WhatsApp and like the user experience. I think a lot about that kind of making it super convenient to people.
Yeah.
And you work at Kareem, obviously, and I use Kareem a lot. I love the convenience of it, and I think about that a lot in every product, like the ride-hailing apps.
Yeah.
Everything. I'm like, if this company wants to acquire a customer and they want to grow, why can't they like put their effort on fixing and on making like my experience more seamless?
Right.
I was trying to, now we're at QNL, Qatar National Library. I was trying to print the papers that you guys have in here. You have to put the code, so you have to buy a 10 riyal card to print. You have to put the code in the computer.
Okay.
Put the code again in the printer. A code, right? Like, and it's not an easy code. It's like 7 numbers and digits just to print one paper.
Right.
Like, I know this is not a business. QNL is not a business. But imagine if
but
they
that
were
user
like,
experience bit is so critical. And I think that's where most of the
Zero
startups come
customer
from, right?
focus.
Yeah. They find a problem and they're like, I think I know how to fix it. And then they just think it works.
I think convenience.
Yes, it's a big factor. I think,
All right.
Yeah.
So courses. Let's talk courses. Because you did a lot. You had a professional writing minor.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And you did a lot of like design stuff. That was kind of your thing. So you've done everything. You went in thinking economics. Then you did like business. And then you did Python. And you did courses. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Right. I think the advice around minors was, hey, why don't you focus on something that will immediately benefit your career?
Yeah.
And the advice around taking electives was, again, if you're trying to specialize into something, then try to cramp up as many electives towards that one field, right? So if you're, let's say, going for finance, do every bit of finance elective there is and just try to build on that track. I think some of that advice was relevant. Some of it was, I think it would deprive you of the kind of breadth of experiences you could have if you took a different course and it expanded your mind into something else, right? So if you look at the professional writing minor, I think there were some courses which were immediately useful. So there was a course called Writing for Professions,
Right.
And that would help you figure out how to do your resume, your cover letter, how do you reach out to people, how do you write reports. And those are very, very critical skills, right? Because when you enter the industry, all of these things eventually do, count in.
When it says reaching, sorry to cut you off, reaching out to people, does it go into like LinkedIn, like DMs?
Yes,
kind of
yes,
very
everything.
It
practical?
was Susan
Everything.
Hagen that taught that. Or was it Ludmilla?
So Professor Susan, I took 2 courses with her. One was document design and one was visual.
Doc
local.
design. I remember that one. That was really cool.
So I'll get to that in a bit because that was one of the courses that I thought was at the time it was fun to go through, but I didn't realize how big of an implication it would have when I would get out into the field. But just going over the writing professions thing, right? There were a couple of courses that made sense, and some like document design at the time were just like go through, fulfill your minor, and then you can move on to other things. So in doc design, we were using Adobe, right? And we were trying to create these different pamphlets and trying to present information in a very visually appealing way. And I found myself being obsessed about fonts for some reason, right? Typography, and about color, about making sure the alignment was perfectly fine.
The spacing within the font.
Yeah.
It was a whole universe.
Right?
It's useful for marketing, right? Like advertising?
Yes.
What other areas?
So I found strange examples within my role immediately after I joined Kareem, where document design became relevant. Presentations was a big one. If you wanted to make very visually appealing ones, there was a standard that I think I had gotten stuck at after I had done a couple of courses, let's say BizCom, BizPress, and so on. But then document design gave me this new array of what I could look at in terms of making things visually appealing.
I think you've dabbled with design even in your career.
Yes. There was a tool that we're using. It's called Canva.
Okay.
And Canva is just an online design tool that helps you.
It's free. It's available for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah,
You can buy items.
So how to make sense of, let's say if I was working as a supply manager, right, and I wanted to advertise to captains that here's something that's happening. The way that content comes off to you as a user is very important, because in those first 5 or 10 seconds you're going to decide, do I want to engage with it?
Exactly.
Right?
I mean, I can tell you, working in a very technical field in aviation, I mean, there's so many safety critical things and safety critical messages that need to send out, and people, a lot of people just assume, well, hey, you just send the memo, and you send a circular, and it's their responsibility. Well, in reality, this is not the case. It is the responsibility of the initiator of that message to make sure that message is easily understood. If you write a big memo with small fonts, like at the end of the day, I think it's the messenger's responsibility to make sure that's done. And I think document design like made you realize that, hey, people need convenience.
Yeah.
It's come back to the whole convenience thing, right?
Right.
And you need, it's the responsibility of the people that create that message to send it forward in a way. I remember your campaign, your president campaign. Oh my God, this poster, his poster was like, it was one of the most engaging posters that I had ever seen. Now I cannot remember exactly what it was about it, but maybe it was a combination of the colors and the way you had used. That was so cool.
Yeah, there was a sense of, so again, right, in document design we explored all these color palettes, and we're like, what colors make sense, what should come off as a font that should be big versus a font that should be small. And so you're making all these decisions when producing these documents. In fact, it's so become a part of my life now that I go to a restaurant and I start critiquing their menu. I'm like, if only they had presented visually this part of the dish better, I probably would have ordered it. But their menu sucks. Right?
Completely.
So there's all these things that play a role. So document design was a big one. I think 1 or 2 courses that also opened up and were very interesting. And I was not particularly taking the approach that, okay, I had to do everything for the sake of the GPA. There was, obviously you have electives that you could take for pass and fail, right? So you reduce the burden on yourself from the GPA perspective, but then you're really into the course because you want to learn something new. And I think that's the part that I think every student should take advantage of. So those 2 courses were, one was, I think it was responsible finance, and that was one of the courses to try and learn more about Islamic banking and what are the different products, right?
You were into finance at some point, huh? Curious about finance.
Track.
That
was his track.
So I took general management.
Oh yeah, you changed.
Yeah. So I tried to generalize.
I remember when I heard, I thought that was so scandalous. Like, I was like, what? General management? I was like, what is he doing?
Does he not have a plan in mind?
I mean, think about the pressure, right? Like you really have to end up doing things the way you want, because it's that impression of like, oh, they're a finance track, they're like the smarter kids. And I'll be honest, that was the reason I did a finance track. I loved it. I had a great professor, a great time, but frankly speaking, I only did it because it was like a status thing. So I thought it was so scandalous that you went with the general track.
Again, right? So there's this advice that floats around that the moment you're going to put your resume in front of a recruiter, they're going to look for, are you a finance person, are you a marketing person, are you an operations person, and so on. And I feel like obviously there's a challenge in the industry itself where graduates are immediately branded that you are this function. And a lot of people realize later on in their careers that that's probably not what they wanted to do. But because you've been put on that path, it's very difficult to stray away from it. And I wanted to just challenge that bit. I'm like, I don't think, I don't have this clarity right now. Do I want marketing, operations, finance, or do I want all 3 together? And so let me not limit that scope. So responsible finance was a great one. The second one was principles of game theory. That was Professor Gasper.
Any students listening? Well, Gasper's left now.
Yeah.
Oh no.
One of the most.
Anybody listening or any ex-Gasper students? What an experience.
What an experience. Absolutely.
It was so good.
Econ was boring. It was so boring. Like, it was not practical for me.
Yeah.
Like, we get theories.
Yeah, that's the bit, right?
It wasn't practical for me. People like left and right, they were enjoying it. I'm like, no.
and that's fair, right? So that's one of the reasons I didn't go too into economics as well. I think theory was.
Why did you like? What was
about?
What made you click about it?
I think one is, and this is from person to person, right? there's a course that you may realize you have a lot of interest in because of a certain professor and how they deliver the content.
Absolutely.
Right? So I know people who have gone through marketing and would end up saying, man, I don't feel like I learned too much. I feel like, all of those things I could have picked out from articles. And there are some people who would have taken a professor's class and say, man, that was one of the best courses I took.
Absolutely.
Right?
Completely,
so the professor and their delivery makes a very, very different
communication.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was game theory and I realized it did have some implications on working in this industry, right? So in ride hailing, we obviously have a competitor, and so you have to decide from a game theory standpoint, if you were to make this move and they know this move, they're going to make this. What do you do for that one, right? So it's a stepwise thing, and I realized that when you're sitting in that class, you're like, when will I ever use this theory?
Exactly, yeah.
And then when you're in the industry, you're like, wait, I learned about this thing. So it feels
that's so cool, because I had that question all the time. Still not in a position to have implemented it or used it. But when you tell me like it you actually use it and it gets practical, like you can get value out of it, amazing.
In a wider sense, quite honestly, your courses in the university are not obvious. Like not all of them are meant to teach you things that you will immediately use when you go into the job.
It's supposed to help you think.
Yes. And that was probably the most important part, right? So, calculus, I would question it every single day. I am never going to use triple integration in anything that I do in business, right?
Don't tell me you.
But
I completely agree.
It was never the triple integration. It was the idea.
Systematic.
Yes. Could you break down this complex thing? Can you think through it? Can you come up with a solution? Can you arrive at some sort of an answer? And that thinking process, which I experienced through multiple courses and not just like Python, for example, right?
Yes.
Standard example of how logic needs to work.
Completely.
And so when I would step into the industry and I'm trying to think of a very complicated problem, you won't even realize that calculus has a role to play in helping you sharpen that critical thinking, which you're now using in front of people and trying to impress your line manager and saying, oh, Bilal can break down a problem, right? Or even for consulting, for example.
For anyone who's like taken a course, because I've been in that place and they feel like, okay, this is not directly in my best interest, or it doesn't directly benefit me, there's always a silver lining.
I'll tell you, for me, it was Python. Like you, I dropped it. I did it again. I'll officially say I got a C. And to be honest, I was really pissed off. It took a lot of my energy. I didn't like it. I couldn't do it. But when I think back at it and I think about the people that didn't take it, I feel like they missed out on something. You really did. It like you have to suffer, and it's you're like, why am I coding? This is not what I want to do. But in your career life, it really helps you like break down things as a logical problem. So it may not be. I don't remember all the functions in Python, but it's that like process of like iterations and loops and like that idea. Is that what you leave with? I may have forgotten like financial theories, but I know how they may approach it, and I know that logic. So I think the takeaway from this section is that like you gotta be open. You have to be open. You may not know what end skills you may end up using where in that state of mind.
And you don't have to have that figured out every single time.
Exactly, right?
You have to be open to the experience.
You have to have somewhere you're going to, right? Because you were career oriented up until like your sophomore, junior year. You started to have an idea, okay, I want to work in this sector. But I wasn't. That was a big problem for me, which made me unmotivated to work hard in some classes and extract value from some classes. But
then I would say you have to be intellectually curious, and that was the thing for me. Like you have to be just open to learning. I think a lot of the mistakes that students make is like, I have to get the A, I have to get this, I have to put this course, but then you're not learning. And that's what used to annoy me. I would be okay. I took very difficult courses and I got B's and I got C's, but would I rather have taken an easy A course? Like never. The easy A courses that I took, I did not enjoy them. I'm gonna be honest. Like it was the courses that where I had to really struggle and be tortured is what are the ones that I remember.
Fair.
And it's also the pass-fail courses.
So you can experiment a little bit.
Exactly. So I think you did the 2 pass-fail courses.
So I did Principles of Game Theory. I kind of remember responsible finance being a pass and fail, but not exactly sure.
For me, it was ethics. So I like till senior year, I was like, oh my god, everybody was like used to scare the crap out of. Oh my god, don't take a great course. It's so much work. I really regretted it. I like when I finally did a gray course, I did a pass fail, and it's the one course that I would say I use every day.
Conflict and dispute resolution.
Yeah, CDR. Yeah.
We spoke about it with Dima last time.
Yeah, and I took it with my brother.
Well, that would have been fun.
We took conflict dispute resolution. I took it with my brother, and it was
like your sibling conflicts at home would be very different.
I'll tell you something. Gray would say he paired us up in a negotiation that was about siblings, and then he would claim that it was by chance, and I was like, come on, like this is exactly it was totally not by chance. But
I think I just want to very quickly touch upon Patis, what you said, right? That you need to have some sort of direction, because even if you want to learn new things, unless you have that direction, you may not necessarily see how are they all fitting in together.
Exactly,
right?
and you won't care about
it's a lot of gray area, and it's there's no easy way to try and figure out what that direction looks like. It's just a lot of exploration, right? So in my case, I think I immediately, again, this is one of the things where there's this skill about independent thinking, where there are people, 10 of them, who are giving you opinions about which career you should take. I found myself just immediately jumping into like a certain track and like, okay, this probably makes the most sense. So sophomore year, somebody told me consulting is this amazing world where you can become this generalist, you can have like your hands dipped into everything, and then you come out as this, McKinsey guy who becomes a CEO of Google, for example, right? So those long-term big picture things, and then you suddenly buy into it and you're like, okay, everything I need to do needs to eventually come here. And it turns out that it's a bit of it's not a dangerous way, but it gives you enough to walk on, such that when you make these little adjustments on the way, you eventually find something that makes sense. Right?
Add and subtract.
Add or subtract. So just have a certain, path in mind, or a certain thing that you want to do in life, right? And it could be as simple as, hey, there's this problem that I care about and I want to solve for it, right? And then you don't necessarily have to think about, hey, how is operations management going to help me solve that problem? Is that, okay, when I go and I have the opportunity to solve that problem, there's a number of skills that I would need, right? And those could be things that you get from your courses. So,
think about that, like the audience, please think about that. It's very important to be deliberate in your university life. 4 years, squeeze like the hell out of them. And have that vision. If it's not like might not be the first one that works out for you, but the second, the third one after a few adjustments, like my dad said, but be deliberate.
So one of the ways that you can test out the waters is internships, right? So courses give you a theory, but it's your internships that help you weed out what you really don't want to do, because like you may start thinking like, I want to be in finance, and then you go intern for a bank and you're just like, oh no,
this isn't me.
I do not, and that helped me a lot. So what was your approach with internships?
Towards internships? So I did a couple of them. My freshman year, afterwards, I did my first internship at a bank.
Oh, really?
Right?
Freshman year.
Wow. Right?
So just checking that box
immediately, right?
First summer.
Yeah.
Let's see what this finance thing is about.
There's 3 months, and I don't think I can sit idle at home. So let me just at least experiment with something. And so there was a bank in Pakistan I immediately interned at after my summer started, and I think the purpose of that internship was, obviously I went in thinking, okay, finance is something I'm considering because of, people telling me around that finance is that amazing thing that you want to get into. But I realized that as time went on from that internship up until the next 2-3 I did, that there were attributes of the work environment that were far more important than immediately the work that you were doing.
Completely agree.
And the attributes were like, what kind of people am I working with? What's my boss like? Am I getting challenging enough work? Does it make me excited to solve the problems that they throw at me, right? And so these things eventually started to take shape when I was working on different things. So, for example, I think at the internship at the bank, they basically tasked me with, hey, we have these loan applications that we need to, I think, figure out for all the clients that we have. Can you, work over them and see if there are any faults, or can you try and fill them out, right?
Sounds like an open-ended task.
Yeah.
So is it challenging for you?
At that time as a freshman, yes.
Okay.
Right? But there was this need that, okay, I may not find this interesting, but let me try and give it my best, and then see what kind of response can I get from my line manager, and see is there something that he can help me build upon, right? Something I might have missed.
Okay.
So the feedback that they gave me, the recognition, and then eventually teaching me the things about finance which clients look for when they're coming to, let's say, take a loan or all these things, new things to learn, found that interesting. Come to the internship at the very last semester, and this was the internship at Kareem right before I interviewed for a full-time position. At that time, circumstances were a bit different, and I'll be very, very honest. It was my final semester, right? And I felt like from my internship track record, I hadn't landed one at a prestigious firm, such that that internship would immediately help me land a full-time job at a very good company.
Because that's the advice sometimes you get is like, do a good enough internship that you don't have to job hunt later.
Yeah, right. So and that's
it's
a fair
lot of pressure.
advice,
But it's a lot of pressure, right?
Yeah. So I remember in my junior year, I was looking everywhere after the summer, trying to figure out. In fact, in junior year, in the summer, I was working as an HOC. So that in itself was
the
head orientation counselor, where you organize the orientation for the incoming freshman batch.
Another iconic Bilal role, HOC Bilal.
Great experience, yeah.
Wonderful in so many ways. But so when I was at my senior final semester, this is panic that started to set in, which is I don't have an internship track record. When I go out in the industry, and I have been to these career fairs every year, my resume isn't immediately picked up, right? And I try to follow up with recruiters, and it doesn't seem like anybody's responding. So one thing I think I would recommend to students is when there's an opportunity to apply, like treat that opportunity as something like, okay, if I was at my final semester and this was the only thing on the table for me, how would I react to it, right? And so at that time as a student, I felt a bit more desperate, like I really, really need to get something good. And at that time, Kareem wasn't a huge brand name. It was just, getting to grips with, up and coming. But I saw this like, okay, they're looking for an intern. It was a market and business intelligence intern, right? And the ask for getting into or applying for the program was, can you write a 2-page report on how are you going to acquire more student users from the campuses? Okay. Right? Seems a straightforward problem to solve.
Pretty solid, that's a good ask.
But I realized that at that point,
whoever put that, right? I mean, do you care about this enough to kind of go out there and put in the work
and do something about it, right? And I think that's a great way for companies to gauge how much an intern is willing to push themselves and what they're going to deliver on.
Okay.
So basically, when this opportunity came in, I was at a point where I really wanted to work for a professional company. And what I ended up doing is, I was like, I will leave no stone unturned when I'm applying for this thing. Okay. So I went ahead, and it was supposed to be just a 2-page submission, right?
Senior year, right?
Senior year. Okay. Right? I went ahead, I surveyed like 50 students.
I killed that survey, I'm so proud.
You helped me with the you were part of that.
I should be thanked in every book you write in the future, in every speech you say.
When a student is trying to get something done, it's amazing to support. Right?
I'm telling you, I now fill out every survey because it doesn't matter because I feel like university has taught us like how important it is. So I'm like, you know what? If I need to spend 20 minutes doing a survey, I'll do it because I know there's another person on the other end, and it used to be
people just trying their best, man.
I swear to God, surveys is like an act. Doing a survey is like an act of kindness.
It is these days. I think just people just get annoyed by surveys and like, I don't want to get into this, even if it says it'll take 2 minutes of your time. But anyways, I did a survey of 50 students. I then analyzed the data through Excel. Made some trends on it. Then I used document design to build that visual report of it, like an entire flow chart.
See how like you're like pulling from all the things to like make this. It's like Slumdog Millionaire, like everything.
So all your experiences have come.
It comes now, and you get to like.
The universe brings it together.
That is career, right? Like you're pulling from things that you've done before, and then finally it makes sense. But sorry, go on.
And so we made that visual report, and then eventually, I made that 2-pager that was actually expected. I remember sending this out as a submission at 11 p.m. at night to my line manager, and at 9 o'clock the following morning is like, the position is yours, just come and join. because I knew that if I put so much effort,
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody would be competing for it. But I think I have a pretty good shot
Yeah.
at overtaking the other candidates. So, anyways, those 3 months of the internship, I treated it as like, man, this is what's going to define a lot of the portion of the resume when I do apply for full-time jobs. So let me give my absolute best. So during that internship, I was doing things like, the marketing team would call me out and say, hey, we're at this hotel, there's a concert happening, why don't you come and help distribute flyers?
Yeah.
And I would be thinking like, wait, I'm a senior.
Yeah, I went to Carnegie Mellon. I was HSC.
I have a lot to offer, right? So this is not making sense. But
did you go?
I went.
See, the humidity
right?
Go
So
and
I remember it was 11 o'clock right before the concert, and there's this wave of people who are just tipsy, and they are coming and they're getting flyers and like, oh, what is this Kareem? And then and I'm trying to stay composed and like, yes, this is a service, you should try it and whatnot.
Yeah.
And again, there's a lot of things that you necessarily don't need to have answers of when you're experiencing them, right?
Exactly.
They all add up eventually at some point. So the 3 or 4 things that I was doing in Kareem, especially things like going out distributing flyers, for example, it gave me an opportunity to talk to the marketing team and learn a bit more about the business.
Right.
So when the day came that the person who had recruited me, he basically said, we have a full-time position, do you want to apply for it? He asked me a couple of questions that I had received answers to when I was with that marketing person.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right?
That's so true.
And when I answered those questions, it immediately clicked with him. He's like, man, you really know your stuff. You've done your homework.
Yeah.
And like, a week later, I got the position. I got interviewed by several senior people and everything just came together. So internships, super critical.
Yeah.
Do your absolute best and treat them as your full-time jobs because they add up so much.
I think a big takeaway here is that just get over yourself.
Yeah.
You're not beneath any work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's people like, I'm not gonna, I've seen interns that just say like, oh, I'm not gonna print out documents. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna proofread a document. I go to like this fancy school. But just think about it. If you're proofreading an important report, you're reading that report, right? And if you have to like get over yourself and say like, you can't, it's important that you do all the tasks. People are like, I'm not going to be a note taker in a meeting. And I'm like, it's not about the note taking the meeting. It's the fact that you're attending that meeting and you're getting that access.
Yeah.
And internships are not about like, there's when we do these resume classes, there's a lot of pressure to say like, well, I delivered X amount in revenue and this percentage. And that's great. I'm not saying don't do that. But it's also for you to understand what it's like when you're doing that job.
Yeah.
It's so important. There was a lot of pressure to go into audit. I did an internship in audit. It saved me so much headache at the time of applying jobs because I knew that this is not what I want to do. So not every internship is going to be successful in the sense that you achieve something, but also in the sense that you may not want to go down that path and then you save yourself time. But I completely agree. Handing out flyers,
it wouldn't make sense.
It wouldn't make sense, right? Like, oh my god, like what did you do at your internship? I handed out flyers to drunk people. But that's not what it's about. It's about like that humility and understanding. So no, I completely agree with you there.
And be there now, you're like in a very prestigious position, assistant general manager. Look at like, interesting career you had. And I just want to say to anyone who's listening to have that attitude. I mean, I remember you in university, you were like very approachable, very supportive of everyone. You were everywhere trying to help people. And that's the kind of attitude you have to have in the long run, Just keep at it. And, that humility you have to put in to do any kind of work that's given to you, to give someone value and give yourself value. So, now we're going on extra time because like it's 12 now. Any second now they can come and take us out of the room. But yes, any other kind of topics we can discuss?
I think let's go over the full-time job stuff because I think that helps. And
we touched upon it a little bit. You started after you graduated, started as a supply manager.
Right.
And then I think the second year started as a project lead, doing the same kind of tasks.
Yeah.
Then you went on to operations manager, and now you're assistant general manager.
Yeah.
Just wanted to ask you, which kind of roles or tasks have you enjoyed the most and which ones have you enjoyed the least? I know, they're here. We need to clear out, right? Okay, 5 minutes. Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
I think when it comes to specific roles, I wouldn't say there are those that I've enjoyed less. I think with every role there came a different array of responsibilities and challenges and things that you could work on. I think the beauty of working at Kareem has been that you're always surrounded by, so you're not limited to that particular domain, such that if you wanted to explore marketing a little bit, you could go out and experiment, here and there. So the things that made sense in all these roles, and especially my current one, which I obviously enjoy the most, is I get to have a bird's eye view of all corners of the business.
Wow.
And it aligns so well with the things that I want to do in the future, which is, and it's a very simple thing, right? So I want to start a tech company, right? I don't know what kind of problem I want to solve. That's a discovery phase.
But you have the skill set.
But not have the skill set. I'm still.
You do have the skill set.
I don't want to jump the gun here. But I know what is required by successful founders and successful tech companies, right? I tend to do a lot of reading from different sources and see what's making sense and what isn't. So in that process, I'm trying to see, okay, in my role right now, which has opened so many doors and allows me to learn from so many different functions, what are the different challenges that I need to sort of have experienced and solved for, such that when I do get the opportunity, inshallah, to start a tech company, then I can face them with a little bit more ease. So as an AGM, if I give you a little bit of background, right? Supply manager, projects lead, and operations manager, all three were focusing on one aspect of the business, which was how do you maintain a fleet of thousands of vehicles?
Okay.
How do you ensure that the captains who are, working with you are engaged, they're happy, they're motivated, they're properly incentivized, and then at the same time, because you're in a leadership role, how is your team growing? How are they, professionally supporting this entire goal of the company?
So on that, a very selfish question. One of the biggest reasons why people, and this is like a study done, and the study basically said the number one reason why people leave their job is because they don't like their boss.
Yeah, I heard that.
Okay.
And this was across the board. So this was like everybody from nurses to surgeons to actors to teachers.
Yeah.
What have you picked up, and what advice would you give to people that are moving into a leadership role?
Yeah.
And to be a good boss, but not being a pushover, but then also being stern, but also development. I know it's a tough one.
Yeah, I think.
But what are some of the tips and tricks that you want to pass on to somebody?
Sure. I think leadership is that one. I don't know. It's just that kind of scope that's never ending, and there are so many moving parts that you have to figure out, right? So I think for those who are in a leadership role. The thing important for me, and something my line manager has advised me, and he's been an incredible mentor. He's supported me in so many ways, and he's taken bets on me, right? So I'm early on in my career when you look at these titles and roles.
Not even 26, I think, right?
Well, yeah, close. Right. So it's about him wanting to see, looks like this guy has potential. Let's give him something more challenging and see can he swim. But so it's important for me and for those who are in leadership positions to try and discover what their leadership management style is. So if I go back to something like organizational behavior we went through in college, it taught you about, here are these leadership styles like the democratic leader, the autocratic, the kind of the coach, right? And those are different styles, but they don't work for every single individual, right? And the more senior position
you're managing. Under you. Okay.
Yeah, right? Because it turns out that every single individual is unique in their perspective, and there's a very different set of motivators and demotivators that work.
Okay.
So I cannot go for a cookie cutter solution and
this is my leadership style fit. Actually,
you need to fit mine versus me fitting yours. So a leader has to fit the style of how people work and get motivated.
I like that.
You have to go, kind of like Laura, our VP. I remember she comes into where the employees are, goes into their world, talks about what their kind of motivation. Do you want to do? What's your goals with this company? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Their context.
I mean, I've seen that even with my boss. I think he one of the things he told me very early on is most likely you're not going to get to pick the team.
Yeah.
You know, out of the 70 people you are given, 3 or 4 might be your pick. The rest is just given. You know, in university, and this is something I really want to urge people to understand university. Don't stick to the group of people that you always work with. You know, it's like, this is my team of 3 people.
Yeah.
I never had that team. Like, I may have had some people, but I feel like it made me very comfortable working with other people. So the reality is, in life, you don't get to pick your team.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, it's the same level of result that you have to deliver.
Yes.
So you can complain about them after work or before work or whatever you want to do, but when you're at work, it's a lot of hard work to manage that and get those results.
Yeah. And I think that's where your growth kind of comes in, where you have to be very conscious about the comfort zone that you're in and how long you want to stay there.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're looking to do or get something that you haven't, achieved before, you have to do something that you weren't doing before. Right?
Right, yeah.
So it's a very simple thing, and you cannot stay in that comfort zone and expect those things to happen for you.
Those benefits.
Yeah, you have to get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And to me, one of the advice I got is like, when you're getting comfortable, something is wrong.
Yes. Right?
And so you need to be you always have to be a little uncomfortable to
that's
know
where
that you're
growth
growing,
happens.
and that's just growing pains.
Yep.
Right, guys, I think we're on other people's time, so we need to wrap up. Thank you so much, Bidaf, for coming and supporting the show. This is a young show, and you coming here with
Get us some street cred.
with your weight, and everything, coming here and kind of giving us the time and engaging with us. I really, really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much for having me, guys.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Noel, for co-hosting the show.
My pleasure.
So let's just wrap up. Thank you so much for our listeners. Of course, we're going to have the social media handles. Right, we're wrapping up now. We're getting it down. Thank you so much. So see you next time on the 5 to 9 podcast. Thank you so much.